of the G20 Summit and tell you a little bit more about the very story we are just discussing with Dr. Phosa, where President Ramaphosa confirming that the United States has made an about turn in their decision to boycott the G20 Summit in South Africa. We now understand that Washington has issued a letter regarding this. Newzroom Afrika's international correspondent Simon Marks joining us from the other end of the studio. Simon, what are we hearing? What's the latest?
Well, Goli, as a result of the extraordinarily diligent reporting by our colleague Zianda Ngobo, we do now have a copy of a diplomatic note that was sent today by the US Embassy in Pretoria to Durko. And it is clear that the United States is making a partial shift in its position with regard to President Trump's total boycott of this G20 summit. This letter asks Durko to make accommodations and arrangements for an 8-strong delegation, an 8-person strong delegation headed by the Chargé d'Affaires, Mark Dillard, to attend the closing ceremony of the G20 Leaders Summit so that Mr. Dillard can receive the gavel from President Ramaphosa, which will be the moment at which the presidency of the G20 passes from South Africa to the United States. And this letter, and you're seeing a copy of the first page of it there on your screen now, provides the names of the 8 US diplomats, all of them, I think, resident here in South Africa, working out of the US Embassy of Pretoria, that the United States wants to send to this closing ceremony. The letter asks for accreditation for them, plus accreditation for their support staff. It asks for security support from the South African authorities so that the delegation can travel to Nasrec with security. They ask for access and parking for vehicles at Nasrec. They ask for motorcade support from the South African Police Service and Metro Police and assistance with canine and explosive ordnance disposal sweeps for the motorcade vehicles at the US Embassy facility. They also even provide their passport information for those 8 people that they want to send to the closing ceremony to the South African authorities so they can begin the process of making arrangements for them to attend the summit. Now, if this is the only letter that has been sent, and if there haven't been further approaches from the US government since it was sent earlier today, then it indicates that this is a very small climb down by the Trump administration and that the Trump administration has concluded that actually someone's really got to show up at Nasrec to take the gavel from President Ramaphosa at the end of this summit, because otherwise, when would the American presidency of the G20 actually begin so that President Trump could go on to start making arrangements for the Leaders Summit to be held in Florida in a year's time? You know, that gavel passing, it's ceremonial, but it actually has procedural importance at the end of every G20 summit. And it seems that that is what Washington has now decided that it needs to do, that it needs to send the Chargé d'Affaires from the US Embassy in Pretoria to Nasrec on Sunday to accept the handover from President Trump. This does not indicate at all that the United States intends to play any role in the discussions that will be taking place on Saturday and Sunday about the declaration that President Ramaphosa insisted today he is going hell for leather in his determination to achieve in the face of that earlier note sent earlier this week by the US Embassy in Pretoria to Durko, warning President Ramaphosa not even to think about promulgating a joint declaration and presenting it as a consensus document, a position that President Ramaphosa vigorously pushed back against just a few hours ago. But the movement here appears to be fairly minimal, a desire on the part of the United States to have diplomats present at Nasrec to accept the gavel and the handing over of the G20 presidency to the United States. Now, again, there could be further shifts, there could be further developments, but if this letter that Zianda Ngobo has been able to access is the only communication that Durko has received from the South African embassy in Pretoria. It indicates a relatively low-level desire simply to be present for the closing moments of the G20 Leaders Summit at Nasrec, not, it would appear, actively to be engaging in conversations and discussions with President Ramaphosa and the other G20 leaders around the table. In other words, the White House, I think, can say that when they described as fake news reports that America wanted to re-engage in conversations with G20 leaders, that they can maintain that that was an accurate thing for them to say, because basically all the United States is asking for is a seat around the table so that an American diplomat can accept the gavel from President Ramaphosa before everybody goes home. But it's definitely an indication that the United States appears to have realized that completely being absent from this summit was not an option as far as those closing ceremonies are concerned.
Simon Marks, thank you very much indeed. Very, very well explained and quite clear. All right.